Imagine this. You wake up one morning filled with excitement, purpose, and determination. You're fired up. You've got the plan, the goal, the dream. Today is the day everything changes. But a week later, that fire is a flicker. The goal feels distant again. The plan is buried under emails, errands, and excuses. Sound familiar? We don't struggle with dreams. We struggle with discipline. We don't fail because we're not capable. We fail because we're not consistent. Let me be clear, motivation is overrated, it's fleeting, it's emotional, and it's unreliable, but consistency is quiet, boring even, but it's where all the power lies. The truth about consistency, you see, we've romanticized success as a lightning strike. Sudden, brilliant, blinding, but in reality, success is a slow, silent drip, day after day, effort after effort. It's brushing your teeth even when you're tired. It's showing up even when no one is watching. It's doing what you said you'd do, especially when you don't feel like it. So how do you force yourself to be consistent? You stop negotiating with your feelings. You set rules, not goals. Rules like, I write 500 words a day, or I don't skip workouts. Rules are clear, goals are optional. Rules remove the debate. You shrink the task. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and start where you are with what you have. 5 minutes of action beats an hour of planning. You attach consistency to identity. You don't say, I want to write. You say, I am a writer. You don't say, I'm trying to be healthy. You say, I'm the kind of person who doesn't miss workouts. We become who we believe we are. And finally, you embrace boredom because mastery isn't about excitement. It's about endurance. The greatest doers in the world are not the most motivated. They are the most disciplined when it's hard, dull, or thankless. You don't need to feel like it. You just need to do it. This is the truth that most people never accept. And it's exactly why they stay stuck. We've been conditioned to believe that action should come from inspiration, that we need to be in the right mood, with the right mindset, at the right time, in the right place, before we can begin. But that's not how consistency is built. That's not how real change happens. Waiting until you feel like doing something is the fastest way to ensure it never gets done. The people who succeed, the ones who grow, improve, and build incredible things, they don't rely on their feelings. They rely on their decisions. They've trained themselves to stop negotiating with their emotions, because feelings are fleeting. One day you're energized. The next, you're tired, distracted, discouraged. If your actions are based on your moods, you'll never be dependable, even to yourself. Think about it. How often have you had a plan, a goal, or an idea that excited you in the beginning? You were fired up. Motivated? You told yourself, this time it's different. But a few days or weeks in, the motivation faded, life got busy, the spark died out. And without that emotional high to carry you forward, the whole plan collapsed. That's what happens when you depend on how you feel. What separates the committed from the inconsistent is the refusal to argue with the task. When you decide something is important, when you've committed to a goal, you take action no matter what emotional state you're in. That means getting out of bed when it's cold and dark. It means starting the workout when you're sore or exhausted. It means writing the page when the ideas aren't flowing. You train your mind to understand that your feelings are valid, but they're not in charge. You are. This shift in mindset isn't easy at first. Your brain will resist. It will throw up excuses, distractions, and perfectly logical reasons why you should skip today. It will whisper things like, you deserve a break, or you can always start tomorrow. That's the voice you must learn to ignore, because that voice is comfort talking, and comfort never leads to growth. The more often you silence that voice and take action anyway, the quieter it gets. Over time, your discipline strengthens, and your emotional resistance weakens. The magic of this approach is that feelings often follow action. You might not feel like going to the gym, but once you're moving, energy builds. You might not feel like sitting down to work, but after a few minutes, focus kicks in. Action creates momentum, and momentum creates progress. And progress, even small progress, is incredibly motivating. But the key is to act asterisk before asterisk the feeling arrives. You don't wait for it. You lead with action and let the motivation catch up. This is how consistency is forged, not by being inspired, but by becoming immune to the excuses your feelings throw at you. When you stop asking yourself, "Do I feel like it?" and start asking, "What did I commit to?" everything changes. Most people set goals, fewer people keep them, and even fewer build a life around them. The reason is simple: goals are easy to set but hard to sustain. They sound exciting, they give us a temporary rush, and they make us feel productive in the moment. But goals alone are fragile. They live in the future. They depend on ideal conditions. They're subject to our changing moods, unpredictable schedules, and the 100 daily distractions that pull us in every direction. Goals can inspire us, yes, but inspiration fades. What you need instead are rules. Rules aren't about restriction, they're about structure. They eliminate decision fatigue. When you set a rule for yourself, you take choice out of the equation. You create a standard that doesn't care how you feel, what kind of day you're having, or whether you're in the mood. A rule is a line you draw in the sand and say, "This is what I do." No debate, no excuses. That's how consistency is born, not from motivation, but from self-imposed boundaries. Take the example of someone who wants to write a book. A goal sounds like this: I want to finish my manuscript by the end of the year. A rule sounds like this: I write 500 words every day, no matter what. The first is an outcome. The second is a commitment. The first depends on long-term discipline. The second builds it daily. Rules break a large goal into manageable, repeatable actions that become habits. They create rhythm, and rhythm sustains you when energy runs low. When you rely on goals, every day you have to renegotiate with yourself. Should I go to the gym today? Should I eat healthy? Should I do that task I've been avoiding? You spend precious mental energy making decisions. But when you have a rule, there is no question. I don't miss workouts. I don't skip writing days. I shut down all distractions after 9 p.m. Rules simplify your life. They anchor your behavior to your values rather than your moods. What makes rules powerful is their clarity. Vague commitments like "I'll try to eat better" or "I want to get in shape" are easy to abandon because they're undefined. Clear rules like "no sugar during the week" or "gym 3 days a week minimum" give you something to measure. Clarity builds confidence. You know when you're on track and when you're not. You're no longer chasing an abstract idea of success. You're executing a defined system. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you live by rules. You stop seeing tasks as optional. You stop treating your commitments as suggestions. You begin to identify as someone who follows through. Rules shape identity faster than goals do. Every time you keep a rule, you reinforce a story about who you are. And that identity begins to drive your behavior automatically, even on the days you don't feel like trying. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. The mistake isn't in dreaming big, it's in trying to do it all at once. We look at the mountain of our ambition, see how far we have to climb, and get overwhelmed before we take the first step. So we do what most overwhelmed people do: nothing. Or we start with a burst of energy, attempt to overhaul our lives overnight, and burn out in a matter of days. The answer is not to stop dreaming big. The answer is to start small, uncomfortably small. Shrinking the task isn't about lowering your standards. It's about lowering the resistance. The hardest part of any meaningful work is starting. Once momentum kicks in, the process becomes smoother, more natural. But that first push, that initial activation energy, is what kills most progress. So instead of focusing on the finish line, focus on the next doable action. You want to write a book? Don't start with "write chapter 1. Start with "write for 5 minutes." You want to get in shape. Don't start with "run 5 miles. Start with "put on your shoes and step outside." That may seem ridiculously simple, but that's the point. When the barrier to entry is low, the brain has fewer excuses. It can't justify procrastination the same way it can when the task feels huge and complex. And something amazing happens when you start small. The action expands. 5 minutes of writing turns into 20. A walk becomes a jog. A page of reading becomes 3 chapters. But even if it doesn't, even if you stop at 5 minutes or a single step, you've still won. You've proven to yourself that you can start, and starting is everything. This approach also rewires your mindset. You begin to see progress as a process, not a performance. You let go of the all, or nothing thinking that destroys consistency. You stop saying, if I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all. And you start saying, done is better than perfect, started is better than stalled. That's when real momentum begins to build, not from a place of pressure, but from progress. Shrinking the task also creates a sense of control. Big goals feel distant and abstract. Small actions feel immediate and achievable. They give you the sense that you're in motion, that you're not stuck, that you're actually doing something that matters, even if it's just a little. And when you string enough small wins together, they compound. What felt like crawling becomes walking. What felt like a trickle becomes a flow. And before you realize it, you're in the rhythm of consistency without the constant inner battle to get there. Too often, we try to match the intensity of our desire with the size of our effort. We believe that massive goals require massive action from the start. But the truth is, greatness is built through the consistent execution of small, intentional steps. You don't need to take giant leaps. You just need to keep moving. One of the most powerful shifts a person can make is from trying to change behavior to changing identity. Most people try to build new habits by focusing on the outcome, what they want to achieve. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to earn more money. I want to write a book. But outcomes are external. They sit on the horizon, far away from where we are now. And when progress is slow, which it often is, motivation fades. The key isn't to focus on what you want to achieve. It's to focus on who you want to become. Identity creates behavior, not the other way around. If you want to force yourself to be consistent, stop thinking in terms of goals and start thinking in terms of identity. Don't say, I want to run a marathon. Say, I am a runner. Don't say, I want to eat healthy. Say, I am someone who values my health. This shift may seem small, but it changes everything. It moves the behavior from being something you do into being part of who you are. And when something becomes part of your identity, you don't question it, you act on it. Think about someone who identifies as a musician. They don't need a reminder to pick up their instrument. Practicing is not a chore, it's part of their rhythm, their sense of self. A writer writes, a leader leads, an athlete trains. These aren't tasks on a checklist, they're expressions of identity. The more you align your habits with your identity, the less willpower you need. Because now, every time you show up and do the thing, you're not just making progress toward a goal. You're casting a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. This is why consistency starts with belief. If you tell yourself, I'm not a disciplined person, or I always give up, you will subconsciously act in ways that confirm that story. Your brain likes being right. It will defend your identity, even if it's limiting. But if you begin to shift that story, if you begin to say, I'm the kind of person who keeps promises to myself, or I do hard things even when I don't feel like it, then your behavior starts to follow. And over time, every act of consistency becomes a brick in the foundation of that new identity. The beautiful thing about identity-based consistency is that it makes future actions easier. Once your identity is established, you no longer have to convince yourself to take action. You simply act in alignment with who you are. There's less inner resistance, fewer decisions to make, and more clarity in what you do. You stop asking, should I do this today? And start acting out of instinct and integrity. Identity-based habits create a feedback loop. The more you act like the person you want to become, the more that identity becomes real, and the more effortlessly consistent you become.